Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for checking out this video here on Show Style and Spirit. I am Ebony, and I want to talk about what's been reported. Shout out to House of Aaron and Here for Hot Tea. Those are the channels where I saw this story on, where allegedly Shamea Morton from the Real Housewives of Atlanta, her mom allegedly bought Porsha's mom's foreclosed commercial property, and that is at the root of their division. I want to talk about some things. Is it strictly business or is it personal, and where do the lines get blurred? Now, before we get into this conversation, I ask that you please hit the like button on this video and please subscribe to the channel. And of course, everything that I'm saying in this video is alleged and just my opinion. So again, shout out to House of Aaron for breaking this story. It also sheds light. I'm actually glad that if the two women are going to be at odds, that it's over business and not over a narrow, because I actually thought that it was over a ninja. Okay, so I'm glad that it was not involving a man, but it involved the other M, which is money. Okay, so allegedly, both women, both Shamea and Porsha's mothers, work in the daycare industry as entrepreneurs. They both own like a chain of daycares. Well, one of Miss Diane's daycares was really struggling in terms of during, like, after 9/11, according to House of Aaron. That was kind of like the start of the recession. I was in college when 9/11 happened, but I always felt like my generation, we never really experienced a healthy job market. And then once we were in our late 20s, the recession hit. So I felt like we were deep into our 30s before we experienced like a healthy job market. But in any event, Miss Diane was experiencing after 9/11, the economy was starting to tank. And so fewer people had the money to pay a daycare provider to keep their kids. If they weren't working, they didn't even need one. So she was going to let this one property go into foreclosure. We have all heard of this, right? You may know someone who foreclosed on a property, whether it was commercial or residential, or you yourself may have. I always say that's not a big deal at all, especially like if someone reads someone, or you file bankruptcy, or your mortgage is underwater, or you foreclosed on a property. There's life after bankruptcy, there's life after foreclosure, and credit can always be restored. So I don't think that's a big deal at all. That's not a read. So anyway, Miss Diane was going to let the property foreclose. She confided in Shamea's mother because they were friends. And she said, she just hopes goodness nobody buys that property at that cheap, low foreclosed value, and then open up another daycare. Because see, that's the thing. That's the benefit of buying a foreclosed property, is that the bank, they're just happy to sell it to someone else because they've already experienced a loss when the person defaulted on the payments. So at least if they can get this property off their books for this amount, here, take it. Something is better than nothing. And then you get a good piece of property for an excellent payment. Like for people who bought homes, if you bought like a foreclosed property 15 years ago, you're halfway through that mortgage being paid off. You got hella equity in your home because property values have been restored, then some, and you're just doing good. So like if you bought one of those foreclosed homes and you were just like in your 20s or 30, and you're like in 45 now, you'll be 60 when you pay it off, and it'll be worth a lot of money. You'll be doing great. But that, I guess that's what Shamea's mom had in mind when it came to the commercial property, because allegedly she bought Miss Diane's foreclosed property. Now, I have to say that I would not want this done to me. I would be devastated if I confided in one of my friends, yo, my daycare is not performing well. I'm incurring a loss. It's costing me more money to continue to operate business in this building. I'm just going to walk away. and just cut my losses, and whatever credit hit I get, hopefully in 7 years, my credit scores will be restored. And then that friend turns around up under me and buys it at the foreclosed value, because that's a steal. And so they're just going to make out pretty well. I would not want that done to me. And in my opinion, you would only do that to someone whom you do not like, or if you were waiting for them to fail. So some will say, well, business is business. And I actually thought of that statement when House of Aaron gave the example of Lisa Vanderpump buying a building that Nene Leakes was interested in, and Nene made the mistake of telling her. Now, for me, I actually lean towards that transaction was strictly business, or more so business, slimy business, yes, but strictly business, because Lisa Vanderpump and Nene Leakes, they do not appear to be close at all. And then also, let's just be real, like, white people can't handle when you are truly their equal. They may say that they want that all men are created equal, but when you move into their neighborhoods, you live next door to them, and you drive a luxury car and their asses don't. You're a single sister, and they got the two income household, and you living in the same neighborhood as them. They don't understand stuff like that, and they don't like it. So I could totally see Lisa Vanderpump like, what? I'm not going to let her get this property. It's a great deal. And then she swooped in and got it. So I say for that, that was strictly business, honey. But with Diane and Miss Morton, it does hurt because they did have a history. They were friends. It appeared from the pictures we saw on Roa. They definitely hit the streets together. I think they went to the club dancing together. And also, their daughters were friends. So I'm sure Miss Morton purchasing the foreclosed daycare stung Miss Diane. So I do feel bad. And this explains it all for me. I was wondering why Miss Diane has such a nasty taste in her mouth for Shamea, and her saying that the apple does not fall far from the tree. Okay, she has a huge reason to say that now. Now I totally get it. So, in my opinion, this is just from what I've seen on the show. I would not say that Shamea has done to the level what her mom has done to Miss Diane. I don't feel like I've seen it, at least, but definitely I understand why Miss Diane's guard is up and she's trying to protect Porsha. Absolutely. Now, I will say this. If you talk about residential foreclosures, I have seen family members buy their relatives' foreclosed homes in cash, and then that family member pay them back monthly until they've paid them entirely. Like, some people, when we were in the recession and the home property values dropped, lots of people walked away from houses where they still could afford the monthly payment. But they were like, fuck this. I'm not going to pay $2,000. I bought this house for 300 grand. My monthly mortgage payment is 1,500 or 1,700. And now they're saying my home is just worth, 150. I'm not about to pay double. So some people, they walked away from mortgage payments that they could afford, but they didn't like the fact that their values dropped. And then I do know some people who they had the cash saved up, and they were able to pay the house, buy the house at the foreclosed value, which was way lower. And then they let their relative pay them back. Some people, they dipped in their 401k and they did those transactions. And I feel like that's not what Shamea's mom did, of course, because that is really being a blessing to your family member who didn't want to be in that upside down mortgage. So they walked away, and that one family member that's got the loot, they were able to pay cash at the foreclosed value. It's just, I mean, that's just smart business if you got it like that, you know? So, but that was not the case with the mothers, Shamea and Portia's moms. So that's really jacked up. With Shamea's mom, allegedly, she bought the property for self, not for someone else. It's not like she said, well, Diane, you foreclose on it, and I tell you what, I'll buy the foreclosed property at the foreclosed value, and you just pay me back monthly until you pay it off. How about that? I love you, girl. That's not what happened. So that is too bad. And then to add insult to injury, they are entrepreneurs in the same industry. So I'm sure when they were friends, their love for each other made them not look at each other as competition. But see, now that you would see when I'm down and out financially, this economy is impacting my business and I have to foreclose on this property. You swoop in and buy it. That's just terrible. Now you feel like my competitor. And that's what it's giving. Like in the back of Miss Morton's mind, Diane was always her competitor. And now she's gonna come in like the giant, like Goliath, and take over her foreclosed property. Now, I will say the example that I was thinking of as I was watching House of Aaron's video before he got into the example of Lisa Vanderpump and Nene Leakes. What came to my mind is when Michael Jackson bought the Beatles catalog. Now, he bought the Beatles catalog for 47 million. And to add insult to injury, we all know that he and Paul McCartney, they collaborated on a song on the Thriller album. Was it like Say, Say, Say? I forget the name of the song. Um, and then I think they collaborated on a couple of songs because the one that was on Thriller wasn't it The Girl Is Mine? Mine, mine, the girl is mine. I think that was the song. But in any event, Paul McCartney was talking to Michael Jackson and said to him, oh, you should invest in music publishing. And then Michael takes his advice and he buys his music. Now, I'm only laughing because, like, Michael, oh my gosh. But I guess in Michael's mind, they were never friends. That was always just like another singer like him. That was his peer at work. And it just so happens that your coworker gave you some excellent financial advice, and he took it and he invested in the Beatles catalog. So I feel like while some could say that involved a little personal, I think that that was strictly business as well. I think that for Michael Jackson, that was just strictly business, and he did what he did. Now, I want to say that Michael Jackson also purchased Little Richard's publishing, and guess what? He gifted the publishing back to him because we all know that Little Richard was from the generation where those Black singers, they were always on the Chitlin circuit. It was a while before they could perform in front of both their people and the whites where they could be integrated together. And the white artists would rip off their sound, so let alone not have access to their masters, their publishing. So Michael Jackson hooked it up, and then besides, they weren't making enough money to be able to buy their own publishing. So Michael Jackson purchased it and gifted it to Little Richard. That was dope. Literally, Little Richard walked so that Michael could moonwalk. Okay. But in this instance, again, I totally see why Miss Diane is so guarded when it comes to Shamea. And it's natural as a mama bear to want to protect your cub, your daughter, Porsha. So now I see why the venom for Shamea. Now, Miss Diane and Porsha, I would have really appreciated back when that episode occurred. It's been at least a month now. Y'all should have got into what happened. Keeping it a secret really threw us off, Porsha. And I'm guessing that's why it's coming out. That's why a little birdie must have spoken to House of Aaron. Shout out again to him. This was major news. And check out Here for Hot Tea's video as well, because now this explains a lot. But this is business to Miss Morton, but it is slimy business for sure because I thought these two women were friends. What do you think about it? And for any of you that would say, I see it as business is business, I would have done the same thing. Let me know in the comments. This is a safe zone. Like when you go to Planet Fitness and they tell you this is a safe zone over here, okay? Because this is business conversation. If you feel like you understood where Miss Morton was with that purchase, you would have done the exact same thing. Definitely let me know. I'd love to hear you out. And I thank you all so much for checking out this video. Please hit the like button on this video and please subscribe to the channel. I hope you all are having a fantastic Friday. I am. It's very chill for me. I cannot complain. Definitely check out my earlier video from today. It's called Hip Hop Headlines. I talk about a few stories, including Remy Ma and Papoose, a Skilla Baby, and more. And I will talk with you all soon. Bye.